My name's Beth Ripper. I work for a consultancy called WSP, and I work within the Waste and Resource Management team. And I'm going to speak to you today about ideas for achieving integrated waste management. Now, I think it's all fair to say that we're pretty switched on to sustainability issues at home. So we're pretty used to separating our rubbish for recycling, turning off your taps when you're done with the water and you're turning your lights off, using your reusable bags, turning your heating down. But how do we bring that good practice and that knowledge into the workplace, especially when we're dealing with maybe more complex materials or materials that can pose greater risks to our health and the environment? Now, if we look at the nuclear sector, integrated waste strategies were introduced to look at the waste element, and they're now a regulatory requirement for NDA sites. So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about integrated waste strategies. Firstly, what is one? The principles behind an IWS, so that includes the structure and content. And finally, how the benefits of an IWS can be realised as well. So firstly, what is an integrated waste strategy? Well, it's a framework for optimising the management of waste. And it includes all radioactive and non-radioactive waste types, solids, liquids and gaseous emissions from the past, present and future operations of a site. And why were integrated waste strategies introduced? Well, primarily it was to respond to stakeholder concerns about the environment and to help make sure that sites were making most effective use of disposal resources and providing best value for money. But they also help to make sure that a risk-based approach is taken to waste management and help sites to identify early solutions to waste management issues and also to help them forecast their waste arisings and how they would deal with future impacts arising from waste. In summary, the objective of an IWS is to ensure that wastes are managed in a manner that protects people and the environment, now and in the future, and in ways that comply with government policies and provide value for money. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the framework for IWS development. We use two kind of key principles really for when we're looking at waste management solutions. Now, I think you're all pretty familiar with the whole reduce, reuse, recycle philosophy. We formalise this in what's called the waste hierarchy, where we go through a series of steps when we look at a waste type in terms of how can we reduce that waste in the first instance, so reduce the volume that we're producing or the quantity. Could that waste be reused? Are there opportunities to recycle materials where possible before we look at options for energy recovery and disposal? Now, we can't really consider the waste hierarchy in isolation. We also look at what's called the proximity principle. So if we're looking at waste that are arising on site, say you've got, I don't know, a ton of cardboard or whatever you need to get rid of, it might be that your nearest cardboard recycling facility is 90 or 100 miles away and you've got an energy from waste facility on your doorstep. So it might make more sense, although the energy from waste facility is lower down the hierarchy in terms of when you consider the transport emissions and the impacts on the environment of taking it to the recycling facility, it might actually be better to go through an energy from waste plant. So yeah, the structure and content of an integrated waste strategy is set out in the NDA guidance, NGO 1 and NGO 2. And this sets out what should be in your IWS. So it starts off firstly, you want to provide a context for the IWS. So you're looking at what waste management policy impacts your waste activities on site and how your site organises and has arrangements for dealing with the different waste types that you produce. Also, you need to provide a little bit of detail about how your IWS has been developed, the methodology that you've used. And also, you've got to acknowledge that your IWS has got to consider each waste type individually. So you'll also provide a description of waste disposal and transfer routes. And once you've done all of that, you'll be able to look at all your operations, what's happening to your waste, different waste streams, where they're going, and you'll be able to develop your action plans. Now, your action plans have got to be realistic and they've got to be achievable. They've also got to be easy to understand. Your IWS has got to be considered as a live document. It's not a done it once, that's it, forget about it job. Your waste types that you produce might change as your operational procedures develop or whatever phase of project you're in. And you need to be aware that the IWS needs to be updated regularly. It also needs to be accessible to your guys on the ground that are doing the work, your senior management, but importantly to your regulators as well. So everyone needs to be able to access the document and feel comfortable with what's going on and understand the procedures that you're suggesting. And don't be afraid to consider bespoke solutions. An IWS model-like document that they put in front of you from the NGO 1, NGO 2 guidance, that's just a template, it's a guidance document. So don't be afraid to tailor it towards your site's needs. A couple of examples of sort of tailoring the IWS from projects that we've been involved in. We use process diagrams, and as I've put here, simple process diagrams can help to demonstrate a logical approach to decision making, and that makes it a lot easier to understand. This was an example that was very well received by regulators because they were coming to the site not knowing very much about what operations there were, and they could see very clearly what thought process you'd gone through when you'd assessed all your waste types and your disposal routes to find the best way to manage those materials. We also came up with a traffic light system where we could benchmark performance in terms of dealing with the waste management types. And this made it really easy for the guys on site to see where they could improve their performance because they weren't meeting the targets that they'd set. Okay, when we're actually talking about implementing change, the IWS is a great framework for helping you to actually drive change within your site because it enables you to get a much better understanding of the types of waste that you're producing. Without that understanding, you don't know where your waste is going, where your missed opportunities are. And it also helps you to consider which waste can be segregated for better treatment options. It can help you to improve operational practices. I've put on here, i.e. prevent unnecessary exposure. We worked on one site where they had an exposure area and they were bringing goods in, depackaging them, and then they had a load of low-level waste that they needn't have had. If they'd have depackaged the materials outside of the exposure area, then they would have been able to get rid of the packaging materials through their general waste streams. So that's cutting out reducing your low-level waste quantities right at the outset, just simply rethinking your operational practices. And by going through this process, it helps you to identify who are the strategic links in the chain and where there are any bottlenecks or missed opportunities for improving your waste management performance. It gives you an appreciation of the true cost of waste. Waste is really expensive and it's only getting more so. This is because there's increasing pressure on disposal routes and also waste is getting taxed more. So it's something that can't be ignored. And it allows you to consider alternative disposal routes by going through that process. Finally, an IWS allows you to produce meaningful targets. So you look at your waste and you're able to set yourself realistic and achievable targets with the data set in front of you. And also it can help to engage with your staff more because you can ask for their opinions about where they see improvements could be made in terms of your operational performance. You might have a good overview from where you are, but the guys on the ground know how it really works when it comes to actually doing the job. So that's really important, and increasing their awareness and providing training on waste management issues can also help to develop your staff capability and upskill your workforce as well. So just as a very brief summary about IWS, developing and implementing a robust IWS can help nuclear sites to improve their operational efficiencies, reduce their waste management costs, and finally improve their environmental performance. So thank you very much for your time.